Welcome back, everybody, to Brothers and Boss Battles, Video Game Showdown, a podcast where my brothers and I discuss video games, new and old. I'm Anthony Frizaglia, and along with my two brothers, Pete and Tom, we're looking forward towards another great discussion. For those of you who don't know or may have forgotten, let me tell you how the show works. For 3 weeks, we'll discuss one game per week that fits within a particular genre or category. We'll discuss what we liked, what we didn't like, the game's story, graphics, gameplay, music, its effect on the gaming industry, and more. If each of the 3 games is given a thorough discussion, on the 4th week, the 3 games enter into a showdown, or bro-down, because we're brothers, where they'll go up against each other with one coming out on top. Sometimes the 3 of us will agree, other times we won't. Alright, let's hop right into it. Today we'll be discussing the second game in our adventure puzzler category, Grim Fandango, the 1998 game from LucasArts released for Windows on October 30th, 1998. Director and writer Tim Schafer later bought the rights to the game for his new studio, Double Fine, and the game was released on PS4 in 2015, the Nintendo Switch in 2018, and Xbox One in 2020.
This game is a puzzler of all puzzlers. It's set in the land of the dead, the Aztec afterlife, and has a film noir style to it. It follows the main character Manny Calavera, who's Department of Death travel agent, and his story uncovering a deep conspiracy within the agency itself. And that's what we're going to talk about this week. So we'll do initial thoughts first. I think we're going to have a lively discussion on this one. Tom, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, I'm not going to give away too much, but yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I got the popcorn ready, and I suggest the viewers do the same.
Pete, initial thoughts, but keep it short and sweet for the initial thoughts, please.
Okay. I have 2 analogies I want to give that kind of,
I don't think it's
relay
going to be
my
short.
feelings. My first analogy, no, they're kind of short. So, like the Twilight Zone, right? The 3 of us are all kind of, fans of the Twilight Zone, or at least appreciate it. But some episodes are classics, they're awesome. Some episodes are kind of like, they kind of just drag on, they're boring, and you're just kind of waiting for the last 5 minutes, like the payoff or the twist in the end or something. So this was kind of like a 3rd tier of Twilight Zone episode where you're not really enjoying it, you're just kind of waiting for the payoff, and then it kind of never really comes and you're disappointed at the end. So that's analogy number 1. Analogy number 2 is I found this game to be kind of like, if you're watching like a game show, like a multiple choice game show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something like that, and you're just playing along, maybe you're playing along with family around, and then you guess you get a couple of questions right in a row or something, but it's not really based on any knowledge you have. You kind of basically just out of luck, happen to pick the right of the 4 choices. That's kind of how I felt with a lot of the puzzles in this game. It's almost like eventually you get it right and you still don't feel like rewarded, it's something that you achieved by critical thinking. So those are my 2 analogies for my initial thoughts.
All right, and I'll wrap up the initial thoughts. This is probably, if I had a top 20 list of video games, best video games ever, or my favorite video games ever, this would be on it. I'm not saying it's the best video game ever made, but I truly love it. The setting and the story are great within the puzzle category. Most of the puzzles are good. This was in the heyday of these puzzle adventure games, especially in the era of pure computer games that weren't necessarily on consoles, your Nintendos, your PlayStations, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I just think all of that's great. I think a lot of the puzzles, I'm sure we'll get into some, are great. There's certainly a couple of misfires with the puzzles, but I think overall it's really good. And yeah, just sort of what we do at the beginning of every episode. There may be spoilers. There probably will be spoilers. I think initially we'll just talk more generally about the game and then maybe get into it a little bit more. I think I just want to point out that all of us played the remastered version, which are if you listen to the short intro, are the ones that were released not on LucasArts, but when Tim Schafer, the writer and director of this game, his company Double Fine later purchased the rights, and then they re-released it, a remastered version. So yeah, I mean, I'll just talk a little bit about it.
But first, let's go to the answers to last episode's mid-episode filler question. Last episode, we reviewed Stray, and we pulled a Would You Rather question from the lore of the game. We asked, would you rather A. Deal with a Zerx infestation in your house, B. Live in a city with no sunshine, or C. Have your consciousness transferred to a robot body? And I think we may have made this one too easy because we had a runaway winner with this one. The clear winner, based on the polling on all of our sites and social media, was having consciousness put into a robot body. And I have to say, I would probably choose the same one. That's actually a cool result as opposed to what the would you rather options usually are. Let's see what you guys thought. Pete, why don't you go?
So, I mean, that's interesting. Having your consciousness transferred into a robot does sound cool. Also, it's very drastic. And I assume it's permanent. And also, living in a city with no sunshine, I also, for the spirit of the question, also assumed it was permanent. Although, I guess you could move to a different city. I don't know if that's cheating. So I don't know. So, assuming we couldn't move, believe it or not, I actually went with the Zerx infestation. So that may surprise you guys and anyone who listens to the Banjo-Kazooie Would You Rather segment, where I chose the camel spit milkshake over sleeping in a dumpster because of my fear of rats.
You mean
and
the milk camel spit shake?
yeah, exactly. But here I figured I'll suck it up with the Zerx. I'll, get the pest control, exterminate them, patch any entry points, and then just get on with my life as usual. Unlike where if you pick the other two, I feel like it's more permanent. So that was my logic.
All right, we have some divergence there, and if anyone gets the Zerx infestation, Pete will be right there to help you with patching up holes. Tom, what do you think?
This was actually a really hard question for me, so I don't think it was as easy as the viewers made it seem with the runaway poll. But yeah, see, I was on the fence about this. I was gonna choose the Zerx one too, but then I don't know. I kind of realized or remembered how destructive they are, and I have 2 cats in my apartment here, so I didn't want to expose them to the Zerx like we see in the game with the cat being attacked by the Zerx. So I was strongly considering that, but then I decided to go against it. Now they're transferring your consciousness to a robot body. That, under the right circumstances, can be cool, but if it was forced upon you at the current time, I don't think that would be great. You're basically surrendering your humanity. You won't be able to feel like anything anymore and stuff like that, or eat and enjoy food and things like that. So I didn't like that one either. So I am reluctantly going to choose live in a city with no sun, because I spend all my time indoors anyway.
All right, there you have it. 1 each from the brothers. I was not expecting that. Happy to say that most of the listeners are with me. And I want to thank those listeners. Thanks for the comments. Keep them up on, wherever you listen to this podcast, or YouTube, or on Instagram or X at Bros A Boss Battles. All right, now back to the regular episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just talk a little bit about it initially. So again, you're this travel agent in the 8th underworld, and you have some debt to pay off. You don't really know why. So you have this job. It's when souls die in the world, you go and you try to essentially upsell them on quicker ways to the ninth underworld, which is the land of eternal rest in this sort of Aztec afterlife culture. So that's you start off like that. It seems like a dead end job, or you're getting all these dead end clients. It then winds up developing more where you see that it's not just bad luck where you're not getting any good clients that you can sell these better packages to. There's corruption within the Department of Death, the DoD as it's called in the game, and then there's a little bit of a journey, and we'll get into that as we go. You eventually try to steal a good client from one of the other agents that seemingly always gets the good clients. And that leads to a very deserving person, someone who should be getting a fast ride to the ninth underworld, to lose out. And that sets Manny Calavera, the main character, on on his journey. And it becomes sort of trying to save this woman's soul, but also bringing down the corruption within the Department of Death. So the main vehicle in this game is our puzzles. So you solve a puzzle to get to the next puzzle, to get the next puzzle, to progress on all the levels. And so there's no fighting. There is what could probably call some minimal action sequences, and we can get into that a little bit. But again, I loved it, and I feel like I'm going on, so I'll let one of my brothers talk about going on from here. I'll let them take over for a little bit.
Yeah, so it's basically a point and click, right? That was what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah, it's a point and click.
Yeah. So I kind of took my hand as to my feelings towards the game. But we're gonna get
when
into...
you say point, hold on. When you say point and click, did you play? So I played with the tank controls, which was how it was originally back in 1998. So Manny, the main character, would look at various things. I think in if you played in the old point and click way, you would click on something and it would allow you either to interact with it, to pick it up, and you could choose which you wanted to do. Was that your guys' experience, or
no?
No?
So I played on Xbox Game Pass, the remastered version. So obviously there's different buttons to do those things, I guess. Actually, I feel like it would have been helpful with that point and click system.
Point and click implies that you're playing on PC with a mouse and and a keyboard, I guess. But I feel like that was one of my comments about this game, is that I feel like it would have been better if I was playing with a mouse and not a controller. I think navigating and interacting with the world would have been easier with a mouse, because you have more fine control over what you're clicking on, and it's not just relying on oh, his head is facing this way now, so now I'm interacting with so now I'm looking at this item.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of things about that. I mean, one thing that really bugged me was I guess it was in year 2 where there was that elevator that went between his cafe and then down to the other cafe or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
the wine cellar?
No.
Oh, in the main,
the main sort of
by the blue
outside
casket
area,
and then up to his casino.
But they made the pathway that elevator was in too small, so it literally must have been 50% of the time where I was just trying to walk past the elevator. I ended up going in the elevator, and then you have to go through this whole stupid long.
They showed the cinematic, and then you have to go back.
I mean, that was so frustrating, especially
there was a lot of walking around.
Where there's so much walking back and forth 100 times trying to figure stuff out. That was very frustrating. But so I kind of agree with your point there, Tom, that it would probably be better on a computer. But also another thing that I wish I discovered sooner was that I really felt you had to press, so we're interacting with the environment, interacting with objects or whatever. I really felt like you had to press the 3 different buttons on every single item that you were trying to interact with. Like one sort of gives a description and Manny might say something about it. One is kind of the interact with this item button, and then the third button was kind of the pick up button or something. And like I kind of learned that like at the end of like halfway through the game, basically, like not learned, but realized like, oh, I should be pressing all 3 of these things.
Yeah, I think I learned that in like the very last part when you're in like the like with the greenhouse, like right when you're going to like end the game, basically is when I figured that out. Yeah, that could have been helpful to know earlier on. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
so it
really
was
not.
interesting when Anthony said that he believes, in the original version where you kind of click on an object and then you have sort of the 3 options. Maybe it would have just been more
Yeah,
apparent to us early on, like,
I
okay.
I've seen videos of
Yeah.
that. So essentially,
Mhm.
you would click on,
The
I don't
turkey
know,
baster.
the turkey baster that you get, and it would, have the examine button, the pickup button, and the whatever else it was. So just um just so there's a little bit more context for the listeners. So in the ancient lore that this is built around, there's the idea that to go from the eighth underworld to the ninth underworld, you have to it's a 4-year journey. Um, and it's it could potentially be an arduous journey to that stage in life. So that's what this game is broken up into 4 years essentially. Um, and that's where that comes from. The little twist with Manny is that you can get there faster, and if you were a good person, and I guess B, if you had enough money to then qualify for these better passages and then buy them. Um, so that's just a little bit about the lore, that encompasses the game, and then there's a lot of, again, that film noir, that Casablanca, that those type of older movies. There's that type of feeling where there's all the characters. There's the swanky casino. There's the guy who smokes and drinks, all of that, like all the stuff from like, older movies like that. So that's a little bit more of the context. So I know my brothers are focusing on the controls, and I'll throw them a bone with this. Is the controls aren't great, regardless of how you're playing, and the remastered version, the graphics are a little bit better. There's a little bit more realism with the light and things like that. But it's the graphics aren't great. It's those sort of pre-rendered backgrounds, I guess, that were popular. Um, so you do sometimes miss things that you have to pick up. There's the turkey baster that we mentioned. I actually didn't find that right away, and then just happened upon it, and while I was running around trying to figure out what to do. Um, and there's a couple of other items like that in the game. Um,
Yeah, a big thing like that for me was in year 1 when you're still in the DoD office, and there's that room in the back with the tube distributor machine or
mhm.
whatever that gives everyone their assignments. I mean, I spent I don't know how long not even realizing that there was another room. So
Yeah,
like,
I mean that happens.
just the camera angles, even as you kind of navigated like down a hall, for example, the camera angle might shift
Yeah,
and then you'd be kind of
Yeah. And
facing
if
the
you're
opposite direction. Then you'd kind of
yeah,
be like running back and forth a little bit until you kind of just calibrated yourself. So there's like little things
yeah,
like that
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 were
was
frustrating.
I mean, that was just kind of how games worked back when this game was made. I mean, it's not like a problem that was exclusive to this game. So like, I don't want to like give it too much slack for that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good point. I mean, it's what, a 25-year-old game, so
yeah. I mean
we have to try to keep that into context too.
and I understand the desire to not want to change it too much with the remaster. You improve some lighting and graphics and things like that, but otherwise you'd have to do a complete rebuild, and I don't think they
Yeah.
wanted to do that. So why,
Yeah.
Well,
we didn't really discuss this, guys, but do you want to take it like year by year? Because we could talk within those, the puzzles within that year, the part of the stories within that year, any control lapses might be a way to keep this orderly. All right. So year one, you start out in your office. You're in I think it's called El Maro. So it's there's a street fair going on outside, and you're kind of stuck in your office. Your boss yells at you. The secretary doesn't seem interested in helping you at all. So you kind of start off there. Um, you get introduced to your job and your role. It's funny because one of the opening scenes, you look like this imposing looking Grim Reaper, and then it turns out the guy's walking on stilts, and he's kind of like short and pudgy, but I think that adds to his sort of everyman type protagonist status. Um, and that protagonist is Manny Calavera. Uh, the first set of puzzles, you're essentially trying to. The first thing, there's this food poisoning outbreak, and there's a lot of deaths from it. So you're trying to get out to get there to reap some souls and bring them back and try to upsell them travel plans. But it turns out that the big boss dismissed your driver and you can't go alone. That's where you go down to the garage and you meet Glottis, who is a fan favorite sort of comic relief in this game. One of the early puzzles is pretty cool. The boss has this sort of automated system to tell the secretary what to do. You have to kind of go around, sneak into his office through a series of puzzles, and change that message so the secretary will sign a work order that you need to have this non-licensed driver, Glottis, who's essentially a mechanic, build a car and be able to take you out on the road to the to the food poisoning to reap some souls. Once you get there, the soul he reaps again is someone that is not really worthy of of much. So you send him on his way, and that's when you concoct this scheme to sort of mess up with the machine and pretty much try to just get yourself a decent client that was being rerouted to the other agent there, who, spoiler alert, winds up being in cahoots with the big boss. So, I really like this. There's one of the main catalysts of the puzzles here is the the balloon magician artist who creates different items with balloons, and so you wind up needing two deflated balloons to put the substances in that allows you to break the machine that distributes the souls, and and you wind up needing another balloon in the form of a cat to scare away these birds, to get these bird eggs that wind up being used by this resistance organization that is trying to root out the corruption in the Department of Death that you figure out. So, those are some of the early story points, and I thought all of the puzzles in that section were relatively straightforward in the sense that they weren't random, that they all meant something. They weren't easy. To me, year one got off to a good start.
I agree. Like when I first started playing year one, I was like, "Oh, this is cool." It feels like an escape room where like you're going around, you're collecting. Necessarily know what they do right when you grab them, but you assume that they're going to be useful later on. And yeah, I think at least in this first section of the first year, I agree that it got off to a good start and that things generally made sense.
That's true. The petrified forest is part of the first year. I think that's where you're going. All right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we won't get there yet, but
you can. Yeah.
Well, let's stick with the office area.
Okay, yeah. The one part in the office area, and this kind of goes back to what we were saying about the graphics and angles, the camera angles and whatnot, but that part where you destroy the soul distribution machine and then you have to basically I guess it's so lock the gate while it's open so that it catches, so that it doesn't fully close.
Right, because there's a worker in there that otherwise closes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he'll just swing it closed, but because you have like the lock.
I mean,
he just
that's like
agree,
a little
Tom.
and I
that's
like
a little
how
speck
just,
on the screen where it's like
yeah.
you really And again,
I
like
agree.
going
That
back
was
to my
that
earlier
was
point, was
but
like
the
one of my.
point, yeah,
if you
but
could
the
use
point,
a mouse and you could like click on the things, then that's fine. But like,
but the point is, and it might take a while, but you might not get it on your first try. That's what you have to realize about puzzlers. But the guy locks the door, so I think that makes you start thinking like, what could I do to keep this open? Do
yeah,
I, do I put something there? Yeah. So
and I'd be okay with that. But it's in order to retry it, you have to go back out to
yeah.
the guy who's balloon animals. You have to get you have to get one from him. And then you can't just get another balloon from him immediately after. You have to go back
No,
inside and
that's
then
not
go
true.
back.
You can. You can get two.
Yeah,
You
you
just
could get
say,
two
yeah, you could
worms.
get two
Yeah.
of the quote unquote worms, which are just basically the uninflated balloon.
Yeah, but
Okay.
then you gotta go put the
Then
packing stuff in, then you gotta go upstairs and put
yeah,
and like everything kind of took like the loading times were fine, but everything kind of just was slow and took long.
but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I still don't think. Look, the lock is tough. And by the
But
way, just a
so on that
shout out to that character going, not bad for government work, and then just walks out like that. I thought that was funny. But
yeah, so it's on the same kind of puzzle. What did you think of having to use the playing card that you punched a hole in as like sort of the key to that, tube assignment distributor machine thing? Like that kind of didn't really make sense to me. Like it's just I got it, I did it, but like, you get access to a playing card, you know the hole puncher on the, administrative
yeah,
assistant's desk, and then like it kind of just felt, but like there was nothing really to indicate that should work or why that should work. I mean, I did not
uh,
like that one.
I think that puzzle is, if nothing's there, it just zooms right through. So you kind of look at your limited amount of stuff that you have,
Yeah.
and it's not like what's good about these games. I feel where it's not too overly obtuse is that if you have to hole punch hard on the hole punch, it punches holes in it. If you use the balloon shaped as a cat on the hole punch, nothing happens. And Manny says that, like with his
Yeah, but
famous,
that's
I
the
don't think, I
problem.
don't really want to
I
do that. So it is sort of corralling you in a certain
It
way.
is, but that's part of the problem that I have with the game. Why am I punching a hole into this card? I have no idea, but that's what the game is allowing me to do, so I'm doing it. And then, I guess the holes happen to be in the perfect position that it would like. Why couldn't I just slip a card in? It had to be a hole punch card to like
Well,
enact
because
as the key. Like
an
it was,
actual card would block the air completely. So it does
yeah,
make sense if you think a little outside the box.
yeah,
That's
no,
why I
but yeah.
like this game because you have to think a little outside the box. I don't.
Another thing I want to ask you guys, like, I got this 1, 2, 3, so it was no problem, but what is that? The coral in Don's desk, and then you tie that to the rope, and that's how you get onto the roof. That was
Yeah,
kind of weird
yeah.
to me. I didn't
So
really get that.
it's funny you bring that up because so just so the viewers, I played this back in like 2016. I guess when it was first. I think it was a free PS Plus game, and I knew about this game because a friend of mine had played it back on PC when it came out. Um, but I played it back then, and then I played it more recently, and then I played it again just as one last just refresher for the podcast. And there's a cool note about that choral, I think. So that's your rival Domino, and it's essentially a counterweight or something to clasp onto to the ladder to allow you to get to the roof. So if you try to throw the like flutters away,
Flops, yeah.
so having a hefty item on the back of that is kind of cool. But I just wanted to bring this up. When you get to the edge of the world, um, where Domino is kind of having, he's running that what's basically a slave labor place underwater. You talk to that guy Chepito, and he mentions, "Oh, this is the only place where that coral is," or something like that. Him and Manny have a conversation about coral, and it makes sense because that was Domino's, and he is sort of like running this out of the world facility. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that
Just
is cool. I didn't catch that. That's cool.
yeah, I only
Yeah.
caught it on my most recent time through, but yeah, I mean, Again, that might have been one of the you kind of have to play with it to kind of just put two items together, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And one last thing on this part of year one for me was, and again, a lot of this kind of followed and made sense, but just obtaining the mouthpiece,
Hmm.
the Dom's mouthpiece, like
Yeah.
he had a punching bag or whatever, boxing punching bag, and like, so like you're just kind of searching for things like what do I need to do? So I punched the punching bag, and then like I saw like something just a little bit movement. I actually thought it was a glitch.
Oh,
Like
really?
you kind of see just a little something on the shelf, and then you got to punch it like a couple of more times for it to actually fall.
I actually will admit I don't really love puzzles like that, and there's
That you
other
have to do
games
repeatedly,
that we'll
right?
be discussing in general that because unless there's an indication you have to do something X amount of times, but I actually didn't catch that you may actually see something because that might
Yeah.
trigger you to do it more. So that I kind of forgive this puzzle. I don't recall that from when I played it, but if that's the case, then I think it's fine.
Yeah, Tom, I don't know if you saw that, but I 100% saw that, and I thought it was a glitch, and like luckily I didn't blink and I saw it.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing that, but
It's like, oh, I blinked. I can't finish the game.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. If there's no more comments on this, so eventually you get Glottis to make the car, and you eventually get to the petrified forest. I think that's after you meet Limones or Leones with the LSA, right? And you learn about
Yeah,
this
yeah, I'm
undercover
pretty sure.
plot.
Yeah.
Um, right, because you have to get to the petrified forest to get to Rubacava to try to find Meche, and so that you can go and help her. And Meche is the nickname of the woman that was this great soul that should have had this easy way to the ninth underworld, but wound up just going on her own when Manny tells her she didn't qualify for anything because the computer is saying she didn't qualify for anything. So you end up in the petrified forest, and it's exactly what it is. It's a bunch of like straggly looking trees and spiders and weird things there. And Tom, you seem to scoff a little bit at this section. So if do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, this is
Yeah.
where things took a began to take their turn for the worse, in my opinion. Um, yeah, some of the stuff here was pretty like obscure, in my opinion. Um, Definitely the part with the you need to use the sign to open the secret tunnel on like the westernmost part of the map. I mean, there might be some indicator of what to do there, but it just seems kind of random to me.
Well, when you pick up the sign and stick it in the ground, it spins and there's an arrow pointing. You don't really know what that arrow's for. I'll give you that. It's kind of hard to tell what it does. But, for the listeners, eventually you stick it in the right spot and it points down. And there's a little bit of you get like a key, like that in that area that opens up.
Yeah, on that part, I took it to that part with all the different
Trees,
trees where you
the
could
holes.
enter and
Yeah.
exit.
Yeah.
So I like spent a lot of time. I thought it was pointing into one of those sort of
Yeah.
holes, and
I
you
thought
go
so
in, and
too.
then it would go to a different one. Yeah,
Yeah.
but one problem I have with that, and like I'm 95% sure this is true, but basically when I like first got to the forest, I tried to pick up that sign, whatever that with the arrow, and I couldn't. And like Manny makes a comment, he can't do that or whatever.
Mm.
So like
That was the problem. Something that I didn't like about the game in general, like not just the specific chapter or year, just like the kind of locking you out of certain things before it's like time for you to do it.
Maybe I just did everything the right way.
yeah,
Well, believe for you.
I definitely did not do everything the right way.
So I
The
will
right
say,
order.
in the Petrified Forest, one of the more annoying sort of random puzzles in the game is where you have to break apart that tree pump in order to get the pieces to make your car rise. Essentially, create these suspensions for your car so you can get over like a area of like
Yeah,
roads and stuff like that. Yeah.
road. Yeah.
So that was sort of you had to move the wheelbarrow to make the different pumps move a certain way and then have Glottis climb up there. Now, the Glottis climbing up there and while it was off and then turning it on. I knew that something had to do with that, but the uh, finding which way to make the airflow on those cables on the ground was that really, it basically was random. And the last time I played through it, I did it with a guide, which I didn't for the other playthroughs because I wanted to experience it. But just trying to clean up some trophies and stuff, I did it with a guide, and even with a guide, that puzzle is tough. So I don't know. I think that was a little bit telling there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also annoying, like, when you have this kind of trial and error puzzle. Like, you have to go through the animation of Glottis, like, flying
Yeah.
around and then screaming, then coming down, and then going back up. And it's just like, all right, come on.
Yeah,
Get
and
on with it.
that's I feel like that occurred a lot where there's a lot of extra movement and things as you're trying to trial and error figure it out, which was just added to the
I guess
frustration.
the logic, well, yeah, for sure. But I guess the logic is you shouldn't be using trial and error. You should have
I
a,
don't
educated
I don't know if that's
guess.
true.
But
I mean,
what?
I think even so. I also did a playthrough with the director commentary, so I don't know if they kind of poke fun at themselves at some puzzles, which I'll get to when we talk about it. I don't think this was one of them, but I don't think everything is meant to be so logic based. It's good if you can fit it in. This one was, I think, just a little random.
Well, that's good because it makes me feel a little smarter.
So, all right. So then after the Petrified Forest, you get to Rubikava, which is year 2. This is sort of on the path that any of the souls would have to take. So when you get there, it's essentially just this port town with a little diner on top, a part of it. You wind up transforming it into a casino, and there's another casino run by another gangster type character, and it really takes on that Casablanca, uh, old film noir type setting at this point. And year 2 is probably the most talked about portion of the game. Um, I don't know. I think it has the most life. It has the most interesting storyline. Has the most interesting characters. So this is, I think, the creme de la creme of this game is year 2. But I have a feeling we're going to talk about some confusing puzzles.
Yeah, year 2 was the longest.
Wait.
Yeah,
Let's take a break, and Pete
Okay.
we'll start with you when we get back.
All right, we've been discussing Grim Fandango and its cast of colorful characters this episode, and we decided to make this week's Would You Rather question based on these colorful characters. We ask, would you rather be friends with A. Glottis, the fun-loving, rambunctious friend who is a bit of a simpleton but always has your back? B. Salvador Limones, dutiful and faithful to the cause, serious but focused? Or C. Chepito, hardworking and gruff, but the type that will tell you interesting war stories? Let us know what you think, and next episode we'll let you know what answers come out on top on our various social media polls, and we'll also let you know our responses. Hit us up on X and Instagram at Bros Boss Battles, that's BROS Boss Battles, or leave a comment on YouTube or wherever you get this podcast. All right, now back to the episode.
All right, welcome back.
I really want to talk about this wine cellar thing. So you and for the listeners who haven't played the game, saying parts of the story that maybe it won't make sense to them, but you meet Charlie and he's basically gonna give you the Union card, right? But in exchange, he wants you to. He says there's a safe with his money in the wine cellar to the High Rollers Lounge or whatever. Somebody's took his money that it's really his, so he wants you to get that money back, right? So that's what I'm thinking I have to do, right? I have to go into the wine cellar. There's going to be a safe there, and maybe some key or something to open that safe.
Does he say safe?
I thought
because it winds up not being a safe.
It's not a safe. It's just
it's a suitcase.
No, a suitcase in a safe. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe that room where the suitcase is like a giant
Yeah,
safe, like
I
almost like
guess
like a
exactly.
bank vault, like a bank vault. All
Yeah.
right, good.
The problem is it's not in the wine cellar really. It's it's kind of on the way to the wine cellar. But anyway, so I'm thinking I have to get into the wine cellar and then there's gonna be something there. Now, of course, much before that, you obtain I think it's like a
Mhm.
cigarette holder and there's something jingling and Manny says like, oh, that must be the key, but that compartment is locked. So I'm thinking I have to somehow open that up to get the key, then go to the wine cellar, and I'm going to use this key to open the safe to get the money. And that's so the problem is that's a very logical thing to think based on what's happening here, and based on what you're being told by the different characters. So that's kind of the direction my mind is going to try to solve this puzzle or these puzzles. And it's just basically none of that was true. It wasn't even in this wine cellar, which he,
Yeah, but the way to
specifically
get to
tells
it
you it
is
is.
via the wine cellar. So
Yeah,
The other
that's
thing
true.
is
But
with that puzzle that you're referencing. So, just a refresher for listeners that may have played it. You have to get a forklift in the cellar. You have to sneak into the cellar first of all, which is a puzzle in and of itself. But then you get the forklift and you ride it up, and you can ride it up, back up and down. But you can't get off with the forklift in the kitchen, which is the upper floor. And there's nothing else to do in the cellar. Logic sort of dictates, well, okay, there's something else I have to do with this. And if you are looking carefully, you do notice that it passes another sort of opening because the elevator is just sort of a grate. It's like a freight elevator. Um, so eh, what you eventually have to do is stick the spokes of the elevator,
the forklift,
uh,
right?
of the forklift at the right time to catch that middle floor, and then prop open the forklift to prop open the gate, and then you're in that vault where you have Charlie's money, and then that
Yeah. So,
solves that puzzle and moves the story along. So I get it; it's not as intuitive as it otherwise might be, but
but there's a
it's
couple of specific problems with this puzzle that kind of occur time and time again in the game. So, number one is you mentioned that if you're looking closely, like you could, it looks like there's some, maybe some space on the floor or whatever. And, so I'm clicking around because, going up and down the elevator 100 times because I don't know what to do. And see, this is where you have to press like the description button. You can't press the interact button. If you press the description button at the right time, looking out of the elevator while it's moving, Manny will say something like, "Hey, that looks like another, floor or something." So that would clue you in. But I, didn't do that. Of course, I was pressing the other button. Um, so that's the first thing. And the second thing, again, problem with this puzzle that kind of comes up again and again is that I I did stick the forklift prongs into the grating of the elevator gate or whatever. And the third I did it twice, didn't work. The third time it worked. So like and stop the elevator and went. I don't know exactly why, but
yeah,
I did read after the fact that it only works if the elevator is going in one direction. I forget if it was probably going up,
mm,
but like something like that, like that's just so silly, you know. And
that
it's
was my
like,
experience too. Like I feel like I just happened upon the solution there. Where it's like, I mean, it was kind of obvious that like, you know, that's the only space where you can do anything with the forklift. And the forklift is there, so like you have to do something with it in the elevator. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I just feel like I did it a bunch of times where I'm just trying to drive it into those gaps in the grate there, and first few times or first however many times it didn't work, and then it worked, and then I was like, okay.
yeah, but like it doesn't work the first time. You're like, okay, I got to do something else, and then you come back an hour
Well,
later and try it again. Like,
yeah,
you know,
well, yeah,
yeah. There is a lot of that in this game where and I'll admit that you could play an hour and not move, but then
oh yeah, you will. If you play
but
this game, you will play an hour and not progress one bit
yeah,
at
but
times.
then I feel like it's like any sort of hard project in any area of life. You'll come back the next day, and the second you put it on, you'll solve it. It's just sometimes you need to step away from it, and I know that's not the way people love playing games, but I think that sort of comes with the territory of what I would consider a good puzzler. Another thing I wanted to bring up, I think I had mentioned I had played with my last playthrough with the director commentary on, and one of the cool things I learned about the this wine cellar area, and then it doesn't sound like the puzzles around that itself are getting much fanfare from you guys. But a thing they had wanted to add was an action sequence in this game where there was like this giant armadillo guarding the bottom of the elevator, and you had to kind of. They didn't really explain like what you would have to do, but there are some. It sort of harkens back to some other, I guess, action type sequences in this game where you're I don't know, when you're later where you fight Domino with the scythe or uh, throwing. I don't know. I don't really know what else would necessarily be considered an action sequence, but they had wanted to add it here, and I guess decided against it. Maybe they felt it was hard enough already. We just to move off the puzzles for a second, we'll get right back on it. But this area there's so much going on. There's the worker bees who want to unionize but can't seem to. Their leader can't seem to gather the words to do it. And there's the casino being run by. It's being run by Manny, but he's sort of playing all sides, and he's letting the corrupt cop sort of win at roulette every time to keep him happy. And then there's the cat races going on. So instead of like horse racing, they have cat racing in this game. And then there's the Blue Casket, which is sort of like this dive bar with all these beatniks in it, and colorful characters and all of that. So there really is a lot here, and it's sort of set up like this. It's almost like a wheel with spokes. There's a central area where nothing. It's just sort of walkways, and then you could go each way to different areas.
Yeah, then there's two kind of more minor parts that are subjects of obtuse puzzles, in my opinion. One is the coroner.
See, I didn't find that at all.
And the other one is he the tattoo artist or
yeah. So basically, you had issues with that's basically all of getting the sailor to not be on there, so you could take his place. That's all and the sailor's name is Naranja, and or Naranja, and everything Pete just mentioned is trying to get him to. So this sailor is getting a tattoo at the tattoo parlor. What you basically have to do is distract the tattoo artist and the sailor to put this very, what essentially is like a hard liquor that'll knock you out that you get at the dive bar. To basically knock him out, but that isn't good enough. There's also the section of this of Rubikava where there's a coroner, going through dead bodies. And as a quick aside, you may say, dead bodies? I thought they were already all dead. But as it turns out, you can die in the 8th underworld in your journey to the 9th underworld by being sprouted, which is essentially where if someone shoots you with a special gun and bullets, you'll sprout flowers, and that's it. I think there's some of the lore where those flowers would then go back and create reincarnation or something like that. I heard on the internet. I don't know if any of that's true, so I'm not going to say it. But essentially, the stakes are high in this travel of the 8th underworld to the 9th underworld because you can, in fact, die. So anyway, you have this mortician, really, a coroner, however you want to say, and he's going through these flowered skeletal bodies. And what you essentially have to do after you knock out the sailor, you have to get his dog tags, throw it on one of the bodies, get a metal detector and give that to the mortician so that he finds those dog tags, and then he calls the captain and is like, "Oh, your guy died."
Right.
So there's room. It sounds very complicated, but it actually all makes sense as you go through.
Okay, so it does. And Tom, I'll give you a chance to talk at some point, but it does make sense in that the captain says, basically he has to be, you have to incapacitate the sailor Naranha at some way. So then, like, it's kind of a good puzzle, right? You have that turkey baster, then you get exposed to that hookah water that you see kind of knocks people out. So it's like, okay, let me grab some. Now you bring it to the tattoo parlor place, and you see there's like a bottle or some beverage on the counter or whatever. So you're trying to basically squirt out the hookah water that you took in the baster into his drink, and basically, I guess what happened when you try to do that, I think the tattoo artist says something.
He sees you. He sees you trying to do
Yeah,
it.
so
So
the
that
problem
clues you into that you have to distract them.
yeah, but the problem is, like, he's giving someone a tattoo. He's not even looking at, like, it's kind of behind. It's not directly 180 degrees behind him, but it's basically behind him, like his back shoulder. Like, I don't know why he's seeing it. And so what you have to do, and keep in mind, this is a very tiny quarters that we're in.
Yeah.
What you have to do is go basically on the other side of him, right next to him, is a refrigerator that I guess is empty. So you open the refrigerator door, then you open up the lettuce crisper or whatever it is, and then he tries to close the door and doesn't close because the crisper is open. And then he flips a gasket, like he's so mad that the refrigerator door is not open, and that's the distraction that you needed to squirt the water in. Like it's kind of like I kind of realized, okay, I had to do that, and maybe that's easy, and you guys thought whatever, and then they kind of ruined it. And then not after that, then you finally do that, and then okay, again, you go back. You at some point, if you go back to the captain, he kind of says like, "Oh yeah, Naranja he's out cold, but not that cold." So it kind of implying like it's not like he's dead. He'll make it. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
well, exactly.
So I'll give the
exactly.
game that, and then you have to go through these other convoluted series of things that you mentioned to basically convince the captain that he's dead, even though you know he should be reporting anyway because he's not dead, right? He should be reporting to the ship. So, but anyway, so that was that puzzle.
Well, yeah. The thing I didn't like about that part is that you have the coroner guy. He's like actually like rustling through flowers. Like, I just feel like you shouldn't need the metal detector there. He should be looking through it, and then he should notice the tag there. Like, that part didn't make any sense to me that you needed a metal detector there. Like, his whole job is to look through these things.
Yeah, I don't know. I had the
these
impression that he was like
corpses.
old and sort of incompetent.
I mean,
And
yeah, he
you
sounded,
need him.
I guess,
You need him.
old.
You need him in a timely manner to report that the guy is dead. But I mean, I agree with you. It's not obvious at all. Like once
Yeah,
you
that you
throw
need a metal
the
detector.
dog
Yeah.
tag into the thing, you
That
feel
should
like,
have been it.
okay, I've accomplished what I need to
Yeah,
accomplish.
yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
did that like
I
way
feel like-
early on, and then it took me a very long time to actually finish that sequence.
You
That's
did
I-
what early on? Get the metal detector?
No, get the dog tag and throw it in.
Oh, yeah. Because I feel like getting the metal detector, which you get in this from Carla, the security officer, that in and of itself is a puzzle getting that. Because you have to,
Yeah, that was another stupid one.
no, I don't think so. You have to essentially let her, like, strip search you.
Although that one actually was smart.
Yeah, I agree. That
like,
one I got. That was okay. Yeah.
because you had a drink detected metal in you, and so she had to do a strip search. I forget where it goes from there, but you basically then I think had to do that to convince her to. She sort of tosses it out the window because she's mad because she's clearly into Manny and he just wants to get the metal detector. So it's that leads her to toss it out the window, which leads to another puzzle where you have to use your scythe where she drops it to have it beep.
Yeah, so
Because there's
I had a
metal,
big
so,
time
like-
problem with that because going back to the first thing I mentioned with the wine cellar, that whole puzzle, you trap the waiter in that little kind of walk-in closet, cabinet
Yeah.
thing, whatever, with your scythe, so he can't get out. But I didn't know how to progress with that puzzle afterwards. So I was walking around for hours in year 2 without my scythe, which didn't allow me to complete other puzzles.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If they're too easy, if it's a puzzle game with nothing else, and it's too easy, it's not good. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, none of these were sort of impossible puzzles.
No, so okay, I'm glad you bring it up. So I have some. they're not impossible, but like, maybe they're 98% you're gonna get it, 99% people are gonna get it. But I'll just do a little math. If there's 30 puzzles and each puzzle is kind of like you have a 99% probability of doing it, when you multiply them all together, you have a 70% chance. I think it's 74% or whatever. And there's maybe there's more puzzles, less puzzles, whatever, of getting all the puzzles correct. And if you don't get one puzzle correct, you can't advance. I think one thing that was kind of one thing, or one way around that I feel like would have enhanced the game a lot would have been like a hint system. And and Tom, you mentioned like escape room earlier. It's kind of like that, right? When you get stuck, you get a hint.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, they could have said you've used X amount of hints, and that's kind of a way to keep score.
Yeah. That wouldn't have been horrible, I guess. It's interesting. There is a website. I forget the name of it. Sorry, listeners, to those who care. But there is a site as opposed to like an actual walkthrough. It gives you hints, and you could click on one, and then if that's not good enough, you can click on the other, as opposed to just being told what the puzzle is, which would be done in an actual walkthrough. So yeah, that's online, not part of the game. So I'm not, but I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know. And there's another puzzle in this section that I really thought I liked, but it's where you have to, essentially print a bogus ticket in order to get the photo of the lawyer and Olivia, to convince the lawyer to work with you, in order to free the CB worker, from prison, in order so that he could essentially start his union and leave his tools for Glottis to take. So I thought that was pretty cool, because you have to really pay attention to what characters say and what photos you view are showing, in order to get the right combo of the race, the day, and the week that the race took place.
I didn't mind that one. It was tough because it's combining so many different clues into one like solution. But I mean, you can't really argue that the information was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also wasn't a fan of this one. First of all, I maybe it's just something I missed. I didn't know what I was doing. It's like a scavenger hunt that I didn't know I was participating in. Like you get I didn't know the main objective was to get this photo or something at that point.
Well, yeah, you don't know as you're getting the clues.
It really is like a scavenger hunt. You don't know what's at the end of it. Like you're just doing it to do it. You get a card.
Then, yeah.
It's like
then once you get it, you know what it's used for, though.
Yeah, once you get it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like you're jumping through hoops, and you don't really like. I don't know. There's no reason to really think it's going to be fruitful, except for it's a game, and obviously they put it in there because you need something. But I didn't like that whole cat thing. So like,
if you do follow, it does make sense.
It does.
Because you get the thing.
Like, no, if you really think about it, but it's just not realistic.
Listen, when Lola dies, you get the thing from her with the tongue on it, and you give that to the coat check in your Casino Lupe, and then she gives you that. I believe, doesn't she give you that photo of the cat race?
I think she gives you her code, and in the
right is that photo.
Yeah.
So it's essentially
it was the rusty anchor thing or something.
Oh, right. It was the rusty anchor thing. And then you when you take that to the tattoo artist, and he gives you the photo. Yeah. But anyway, it was Lola who was killed by this character, giving you all of the clues to get to the photo of Nick and Olivia making out, which essentially be used to blackmail Nick the lawyer, because Olivia was with the
lawyer's client.
The lawyer's client, Maximo, I think his name was. Yeah. So it really, like, it does follow story-wise. It really isn't just a completely random thing.
No, I agree. It's not completely random, but like, it's not like okay, I have this objective, how like trying to figure out what to do. It's kind of like after the fact, you're kind of like, oh yeah, it does make sense if you really follow everything.
But I think you have to think of it as like, I want to avenge Lola, and she laid all
Yeah,
these clues, more so than the other objectives in the game.
yeah. No, I get it. The final part of that with the cat race ticket, I really
Yeah,
I didn't like. I honestly don't remember the clues to get them, but I didn't like the Tuesday thing. So first of all, the guy makes a comment, the guy working at the ticket
yeah, the
stand,
ticket
whatever,
booth. Yeah,
the clerk, yeah. He says like that the hats will be given out on Tuesday, right? The cat
yeah.
hats.
And in the
And in the
photo, they're
picture,
wearing the cat hats.
exactly. But that doesn't mean anything, right? It giving out on Tuesday, it doesn't mean it's only giving out Tuesday. It doesn't mean it's giving out on all Tuesdays, Or why couldn't someone have gotten a cat hat and then,
Come on.
wore it the
That's
next day, the next year, whatever? Like that was like so really didn't make sense to me.
I mean, yeah, sure. Technically, in like a real life scenario, there's a giveaway at a baseball game or a hat, and then you wear it to the next week's game. Like, yeah, you can do that, but within the context of the game, I don't think you can really make that
Yeah, I mean, I
argument.
think that's fine in a literal sense, but I mean, I think if you have this ticket, you have this ticket printer that has the days of the weeks on it. I think Tuesday's going to be the first one you go for,
It was
knowing that
exactly
dialogue.
because that was what was mentioned, like in the game. Somebody said Tuesday, so that's what I used. But it really, if you thinking about it logically, which I was trying to do to solve these puzzles, we're going to give out hats on Tuesday. That really doesn't tell you anything about when the race occurred in the past. We're wearing hats, but anyway, I forget what the other two like clues were for those other two parts of that ticket race. But anyway,
One of them you have to go to that like cat statue that says he was killed on because of the blimp
yeah,
fell onto
yeah.
the
So
thing.
that was
That
very
was on
obvious, but
the blimp crashed in the second week, and the cat hats in the photo were Tuesday. Um, and I think the photo has the number 6 on it, like as if that was the sixth race. So the photo really gives you
maybe,
two of the three puzzles. You need a little bit of the dialogue to get. The photo gives you one full factor and then a portion of a
right.
second factor. Booth clerk gives you the second half of that second factor, and then the cat statue little plaque gives you the third one.
Yeah, part of the thing that was so annoying was that you get that ticket printer, or at least I did, very
Yeah,
early before
yeah,
you
you
get a
get
lot of access to these clues. So like you keep trying to think
yeah. That's one of the first things you get
yeah, yeah.
in year two when you talk to
But it's
Charlie.
actually one of the last things you actually have to use, or
Yeah,
very late in year
yeah, in
two.
this section. All right. I mean, there's a lot of other cool things in that section, but if anyone has nothing further regarding Rubicava, should we move on to the Sea of Lament?
Sure.
So after year two, you do get on the boat and you're traversing the Sea of Lament. You wind up getting to a port where they are these. It turns out to be henchmen of this big crime boss who is running this scam that is obviously getting weary of you because you're getting closer to discovering what the scam is, and he's trying to kill you, with the sprout gun. So the first puzzle in year three is Glottis sort of saves you, puts you into this control room, and it's the anchor puzzle. So, what do you guys think of the anchor puzzle?
Yeah, this was another one that was kind of ruined by camera angles for me because I think there's like buttons that you press on two sides of the ship, right? That release.
Right, to lower and
Yeah,
raise
so
the
like
anchors.
I was able to do it on the right side, like no problem. And then like on the left side, I see the button there. I'm like, sure, of course I like, logic would say you have to press this one too, but I could not get the character over to the button. Well, like I just like it took me so long. Like and so like I started to doubt myself, like, well, maybe that's not it. So then I, went down the rabbit hole of just like doing random stuff, like try to hit the button again, and then I was able to do it finally. But like that just, I don't know. It started the year off on a bad note for me there. I don't know if anyone else had that same issue.
No, I can't say I did, but
I felt that puzzle was a little bit of trial and error-ish, I feel, more so than complete logic. But I
yeah,
don't think
100%.
it really wasn't one of the harder ones. Eventually you get that one. Yeah, then you meet, all right, well, then you meet Chepito. You kind of use him to distract this giant octopus, which I think is a pet of Domino, which you find out later on. You take that to the edge of the world, and now you're at sort of this underwater camp that Domino is running with, under the guise of, or under the guidance of Hector Lemons, who winds up being the big crime boss here, running everything. And now
Yeah.
you got to, this is another area to escape.
So I encountered a glitch here, like a unfortunate bug in the game, and I think this might be a good time to talk about just how how buggy the game was. So the one that I encountered here was when the guy Chepito is like singing a song or something. Yes, like after you get to that main area.
You have to grab them, or is that a different part?
Was it where you have to have the like barnacles grab them, or
No,
is
no,
it
no,
like at
no.
the
So
very
no, just
beginning?
after. This is it wasn't a game breaking bug or anything, but so like he's singing. This is like where you can
Yeah,
trade with him, and he's like he's singing this like
Oh,
annoying song, and then
yeah,
like so I navigated away from that screen, and he just kept sing like I just kept hearing him singing it no matter where I was in the level.
Oh, jeez.
that's the
Yeah,
worst.
that was
Yeah, because that song was annoying in his
yeah,
like gravelly voice.
that was
But
brutal.
so
So I had to restart.
How long did that last?
I had to stop. I had to quit the game and relaunch it in order to.
Had you saved recently, or
Well, I mean, you could save. You can save whenever you want.
manually?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you saved before?
no, you saved after you encountered that glitch, but then when you restarted, the
When you
glitch was
restart the
gone.
game, the glitch was gone. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
good at least, because it didn't really save the glitch.
But
Yeah, so that was
on
super
this,
annoying.
oh sorry,
No, go ahead.
no on Chepito. So like when he's singing that song, when you're underwater, it's just so loud, and like it's first it's disturbing, it's annoying, and you can't hear the other characters kind of saying things, and sometimes characters say things like Manny that gives you clues, and
Yeah.
that didn't just happen there. When Naranjo was snoring, like it was so incredibly loud, you couldn't hear the characters
Yeah.
talk.
The guy in the elevator too that went to the wine cellar. The guy who was like the worker
Yeah.
there. He snores too, and it was like super loud.
Yeah, and even
Yeah,
like
there was some definite issues with the audio mixing in this game.
for a remastered version, there's no reason why that couldn't have been fixed. Even the bees demonstrating or whatever, yelling, like I know they're supposed to be
Oh, the
yelling, but
chanting, yeah.
I mean it shouldn't be at the expense of hearing the main character talk. I mean,
Did you play with
and
headphones?
Glottis too had some things where he was really loud and annoying. I think when he was
Yeah.
making the car sounds like vroom 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 or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
I think that was purposeful though.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That was annoying to me all throughout the game.
I mean, so I think again, year two was sort of like I think when you see graphics of this game, it's year two. It's from year two, and it's this discussion of this game. It's year two. I think when people talk about the music, you sort of have that, big band music. You have that jazz music, and just as a quick aside, I think the soundtrack. Not that I'm a huge fan of any of that type of music, but they really hit it spot on. The composing here is great for capturing that film noir music, and then just little little flourishes and things like that. You know, there's a scene in year one in Elmora when you're on sort of a ledge of a building, and it's sort of like a like sort of just like, oh, am I gonna fall off? Kind of
I
music
had no
and
idea
sound.
what she meant.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
Then listen,
the music was good. I agree.
yeah, then just in the
And
casino and
yeah.
all of that. And so,
No, I
and
liked the graphics, especially considering how old the game is. I mean, I know we played remastered, but it was good. Like kind of the little cutscenes or whatever. Those are
yeah, the
high
cutscenes
quality.
are pretty high quality. And look, in the Sea of Lament section, I didn't find any of the puzzles incredibly difficult. I know you guys probably had breaking out of that safe that Meche gets put into by Domino after she threatens him. So yeah, again, spoiler, you do meet up with Meche, and she's sort of become disgruntled, and the her goodness has sort of faded away because of this journey that she was never meant to make, and she's sort of being forced to work for Domino at this station at the edge of the world. And so you run into her again, and then she's kind of mad at you as the protagonist, sort of blaming him for that. But then they eventually sort of have to work together, and they get out. But go ahead, I guess. Go ahead and start your complaints about the
Tom, do you
safe.
want to start, or should I?
Yeah, go for it.
So you get this device, right? That kind of
The bus stall.
bus stall, yes. So you use it on the safe, and unfortunately, it doesn't open the safe, right? It doesn't, but it exposes sort of the internal
locking
lock.
mechanism?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's kind of a little, it's not just you go onto each kind of thing and move it. That's a little bit of a puzzle. I like that, and you get it to a position where you think that is the open position. So that was problem number one for me. It wasn't because again, the graphics are what the graphics are. It wasn't so apparent that, okay, I have them lined up this way. That means the safe should be opened, right? So like, that's something you have to kind of trial and error figure out, which isn't really a puzzle in the game, in my opinion. So that was number one. But then when you finally do get it aligned correctly, and what is it, you pull a lever or something, I think,
Yeah.
then all the different teats of the key or the lock or mechanism, whatever, kind of get all jumbled up again, and you got to start all over again. So actually, whether you did it right or wrong, that happens.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, when you had it right and you do that, Manny says something a little different, like, "Oh, I thought I had them lined up perfectly that time," or something like that. So that's your little clue. But what you end up having to have to do is use your scythe and stick that into that lock mechanism once you have it lined up properly. Then you pull a lever, and it blocks that mechanism from getting all jumbled up again. So I mean, it's really not apparent at all. But the problem I have with that is that it's basically not possible to open that safe unless you use the bus stall to expose the mechanism to block it being jumbled, right? If you do the safe and you get it all lined up and you pull the lever and it gets jumbled, not intuitive at all, because by my logic, it would be impossible to open it had you not destroyed the outer part of
Yeah.
it.
So I mean, I guess that's true, but I think so. I thought you eventually know you have to get the bus stall. You get it from Chepito, who's now being forced to work there too. But and he's using it, and it seems like it's too big for him. So you wind up trading him for like a little chisel that you wind up getting. We won't get into it, but you get this little chisel, and he is much more happy using that. So he trades you this little chisel for the bus stall. Now my thought was, okay, I got to use this bus stall to bust open this whole door, and it's going to do that. So it doesn't do that. It just exposes the lock mechanism. But I think the logic is that you would use it to open the door. And then when you realize that's not going to happen, you at least progressed a little further by having this exposed lock. Look, I mean, so in that sense, it's like I think you'd get to that place. But I agree, it's a little bit tough to having to use the scythe was a little bit of a little bit of a jump there, and a little bit tricky. All right, so that's the safe puzzle in the edge of the world area of the game in year 3. I know that one brings out a lot of angst. Anything else though in this section? I mean,
One other part I had a problem with was when you need to, I guess it's so you're moving around the chain.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it was so bad.
It was just so hard to control. Like when you're like going around that circular platform.
It was the worst. It was the worst controls in any game I've ever played, I think.
Yeah, I might agree with that.
I didn't know what direction I was going in. Sometimes or many times drop the crane. I
Yeah.
didn't want it to drop. It made no sense. I
Yeah,
had
that was
something could be
bad.
that bad.
For a remaster, you expect a little bit more quality out of that, like especially if they're making an effort to bring it to consoles. Uh, you know, when you release something for a console, you know it's going to be played with a controller. So like you have to make sure that it works with a controller.
No, that was really bad, and that was on my list to bring up if you didn't bring it up. So
All right, so eventually you fight Domino. You kind of get all the souls there that are in this edge of the world, and you help them escape. Domino tries to fight you. He eventually winds up, losing that fight. We'll say that just to be a little spoiler light on that section. So there's that. But eventually you escape and you get to now the gates of the Ninth Underworld at the start of year 4. And the gatekeeper there won't let any of these souls in, saying that none of their number 9 tickets are available, that they can't be presented, and of course that's because they've been stolen by Hector Limons and the crime syndicate that had taken over the Department of Death. So you're not quite done yet. While that happened, sort of your first puzzle here is bringing Glottis back to life, because he falls off this edge there, and he's being looked after by all of these smaller demons that are seem to be in the same ilk as he is. And it turns out that if he's not driving fast cars, he dies essentially. So your first puzzle is to sort of get him on a really fast vehicle so that he comes back to life. So I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, those puzzles I feel were real easy, because you get the mug and it has the packing foam chemicals in it, and there's an oil drum that you could turn the faucet on. You get a rag, so what you have to do is you kind of start a fire, and that clues everyone into that. Oh, if we use this material around the area, this might create enough force to propel a vehicle and bring Glottis back to life.
right, they're gonna use that as fuel, basically.
Yeah, they're going to use it as fuel. And in the same token, Manny knows that the stolen ticket in El Morro, where your offices were, that was the first section of the game. So this going on this really essentially a rocket will bring Glottis back to life and get you to El Morro even quicker, or even more quickly. Once you solve that puzzle to get Glottis back, though, you don't make it to El Morro right away. First, you go back to Rubacava. I think something happens where the rocket falls apart, and that's why you end up in Rubacava.
Yeah, I agree. That section was pretty straightforward, at least considering, uh, the grueling path to get there. Yeah, I thought it was cool to go back to the area from year 2. Just because it was like, I mean, in my opinion, that was the most interesting area to, interact with and navigate through. So it was cool to go back there.
Yeah,
And the puzzles there I felt were pretty, straightforward again.
Yeah, well, there's really not that many puzzles, and it's funny. I think I mentioned earlier that I listened to the director's commentary, and the one where you see your car is booby trapped, and you have to so it's booby trapped where with a bunch of dominoes. I guess Domino had done it or Hector LeMans, but essentially what you have to do is freeze, put a cover of freeze essentially over all those dominoes so you can walk across and disconnect the booby trap and get your car. Even in the director's commentary, they were sort of poking fun at themselves, like, "Oh, it's the regurgitated, frozen nitrogen puzzle of the game. Aren't they in all puzzle games?"
Yeah.
And it's
Like
and
you couldn't just get water or something. Like you
well,
had to be.
so the puzzle doesn't really make sense, but I think I got it in like
Yeah, I got
very
it.
quickly.
Same,
I
no,
got it
same,
pretty
same with
much
me.
instantly too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it was the only option.
An
Yeah,
important thing to note here is like a lot of the worlds, a lot of the areas are kind of blocked off the second time that you're here. So it kind of narrows your focus on,
yeah,
just a few parts of like, where to collect items and what to do,
yeah.
which
There's
is
not much
nice.
to do. Really, yeah. You go to Velasco, who's the captain, and there's a bottle there. And when you get a bottle, my first thought was, okay, you got to get the hookah water. But you don't get the hookah water. You end up getting there's a big drum of something where you would
Something
otherwise
else.
get the hookah water. Or maybe it was a big drum of the hookah. No, you know what it was? You get a little bit of the hookah water. You give it to Glottis, and because he's like an alcoholic, which you kind of discover, or it's like we won't say he's an alcoholic, but so then he winds up and gets the drum. It makes him sick, so he vomits on it, and then you have to use like this nitrogen grenade on it to freeze over his
Yeah,
vomit.
liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you get your car.
Yeah, so I had the same experience with you. It really didn't make sense, but I got it quickly. It sounds like Tom also had that. So,
Yeah.
whatever.
To really starting to get to get to the end here, you wind up getting to the I think it's the edge of El Moro, where you see the resistance people again, Sal and everyone else. Olivia has joined the resistance, or seemingly so, and you're back there, sort of running undercover and trying to bring down the nefariousness once and for all. Um, yeah, I mean, then you get to the casino area, and there's a bunch of puzzles there, and the underground stuff. There's a particularly annoying puzzle in that section that I know Tom and I warned Pete about, since he, I think, played this last out of all of us.
Yeah, there are there are a couple of annoying puzzles here too. One I want to bring up is kind of a minor one. I feel like easily forgotten one, but you get to that. You meet what's his name? I guess is it the coroner? Um,
In this last section,
yeah, and then you have to like knock the bell
well, he's not the
and
coroner. I think they refer to him as a botanist, but botany in this game means, like a weapons maker,
oh,
essentially.
okay, that was my confusion. But
Yeah,
anyway,
he was the weapons maker for the main crime boss, Hector Lamont.
right. Yeah, but then so you go in and so I don't know. Again, I was very confused at this part, so you guys could help me out. But he was worried that you were like uh basically a hitman on him, I think, and he's like
Yeah,
scared or something.
because you
And
convince him that Hector's after him now, to kind of get him out of Hector's fold. Because you remember, you have to use that pigeon to kind of scare him, and he's holding the note saying that, like, I'm coming to
that's
get
right.
you.
That's right. Yeah.
So then he goes and hides in his
Shop.
greenhouse, or botany house, or whatever it is. I don't even know what it is, but that does he think you're like law enforcement or a hitman? Because then you get rid of the bell, and then you open the door, and he's like, fine.
Exactly. That was so stupid. You knock the bell and the game kind of automatically makes you exit.
Yeah.
And then I luckily I was like, what the heck just happened? And I walked back in. Otherwise, I would have been walking around the world for another hour and eventually coming back. But as soon as you walk in, then it's like, okay, here's a gun. Like,
Yeah.
like I hated that part. I thought it was dumb. It didn't make
Tom,
sense.
do you remember that or no?
Yeah, I guess what I thought is like the bell is like, when you enter a store and the
Mhm.
bell and the bell chimes and it's like to signify that someone's there. So that not being there, I guess, lets you get in more undetected.
I could have sworn there was a chime though, even after you get rid of the bell though, which
That
doesn't
I'm
make
not sure.
sense.
I would,
Maybe.
yeah, I
Not
would
sure.
doubt that,
Yeah,
but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense that you don't want to be noticed walking in because as soon as you walk in, then he gives you like I don't know. I really don't know. I need a further explanation on that, but that's just a microcosm, I think.
Maybe
yeah,
a listener can clue us in.
Yeah.
yeah. Drop a comment.
Yeah. What I didn't like in this section was all right. You wind up getting like a part of a bone from someone, and you eventually have to use that to follow this, Hector Lemons, former botanist slash weapons maker, after he runs away, because he's dropping. Uh, I guess he's dropping the Sproutilla that interacts with bone, which usually turns the bones into flowers. So what you do is you have this part of a bone, and you have to use actually on the puddles or little splashes so that flowers form, and you know where with the path to follow, and that allows you. The hardest thing about this is that when you put the bone in the grinder, it's in a set location, and if you press the button that usually picks everything else up, it just grinds it in place. So you have to press square or circle, depending what console you're playing on, to actually pick up the grinder with the bone in it and have that as one of your inventory items. And it probably took me an hour to figure that out. And it's not even a puzzle. It's like literally just press this button. But it just didn't make sense in the context of everything else you did in this whole game.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. That seems like a bad design choice.
But that kind of goes to what I'm saying. Like, I actually didn't have the problem because now we're getting near the end of the game, and at this point, I was like pressing all three buttons on everything. The problem actually isn't here. The problem is with the rest of the game where they let you pick things up by pressing the interact button instead of the pickup button. So by the time
Yeah.
you get here, you're conditioned to not think that you need to press that pickup button.
I think this might be the only thing you have to press the pickup button to pick
It
up.
might be, yeah, I'm not sure, but
Maybe there's one other.
if you press that button to pick up, he'll say like not picking that up. So I heard that a million times throughout the game, and then here's the one spot you have to use it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was so annoying.
No, but again, maybe it's just bad puzzle solving on my part, but I didn't realize or think that he was dropping that whatever chemical, whatever it is, that would sprout when it makes contact with bone. So what I eventually tried to do was like when you're in that, like you could kind of hear like a monster or whatever. I guess it's the alligator. So I was trying to like grind the bone to like feed it or make it do something.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing.
And then it happened to illuminate part of the ground. Like, so I kind of got lucky there.
That was I think an accident that I found out that
me too.
you have to sprout. So I will say when I forget his name, but when that botanist guy falls into that section, a container of the Sproutilla like breaks. You could see the different color on the floor. Like that's very obvious. But that's in one section. I don't think it's very obvious that he then trailed that throughout the whole area where I think essentially all you have to do if you do that grinding on the Sproutilla at the very entrance of the cave you have to go to and like sort of that other room around the bend, you'll do it. I think the puzzle's meant to be, you'd have to follow because you wouldn't know to do it at that last spot. But the last playthrough I did when I knew that was the puzzle, I did it just there and it allowed me to go into the next section. So you don't have to actually do the whole trail of it. But I thought that one was a little. Yeah, I guess if I go back and think about it, it makes sense a little bit. It would have been better if they showed him like maybe dragging the
Yeah.
Sproutilla throughout. I mean, it might have made the puzzle too easy, but at least it would have made more sense.
I don't think it would have been too easy. And actually, I don't have any other specific examples, but I did feel like they could have done a better job at, like, there was some tips, some clues that were kind of only occurred once, and you could not re-access those. Like how you mentioned, he fell and the thing
Yeah.
broke or whatever. You couldn't act if you missed that, for whatever reason. You
Yeah,
can't access that again by exploring, which I
right.
didn't like.
It's essentially a cutscene, so it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I mean, then you eventually you catch up with Hector, and there's the final confrontation. It turns out that Olivia, who was sort of one of the poets, and I guess the owner of the Blue Casket back in Rubikava, is now working for Hector. So she kind of takes you and Sal prisoner. She essentially kills Sal, or chops off his head. So he's still alive, but takes you to essentially go get killed by Hector. I think that's sort of where that was. That she's gonna try to marching you to your death. Sal winds up using this. It's sort of like a suicide pill, like to sprout himself, but also sprouts Olivia. So towards the end of the game, so it's really just you and Hector at the end. The initial confrontation, he shoots you. You have to use your liquid nitrogen that's just still on you to not continue to sprout and die. And then you eventually get a gun in the trunk of the car that you were taken there in, and use that. I won't spoil the last puzzle of the game, but you use that in sort of, I guess, a non-traditional way of just shooting the person in order to end the game. Anything about those couple little puzzles there, guys?
I don't want to ruin. I don't want to ruin the last one, but I didn't quite understand what was going on. Right? There's like a water tank, and then it seems like it controls something else. But I think I'll leave that for the listeners to play through the entire game, or just look it up online or something if they're curious.
If it's too hard, you just look it up online.
Yeah.
Which I will say I didn't do. I had mentioned I played with once in 2016. There was one or two puzzles I might have remembered from then, but I did not look up any puzzles this playthrough. Tom?
Did I look up any puzzles?
Yeah.
Nah, but I did confer with you over text quite a
That's
bit.
true.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, for hints, not for.
Yeah, I tried to always give hints. I was a big proponent of this game, and it was my suggestion. Whereas Stray, we kind of all came to a consensus that would be a good game to do. This was sort of my my suggestion, and having played it before and wanting to play it again, and I subjected these two guys to it, which I thought would be a good thing. But with that said, let's get into final thoughts.
Yeah,
how about we
that's
do that?
kind of what I'm going for anyway.
Yeah, Pete, you start us off since you're
So the puzzles
chomping at the bit.
Yeah, the puzzles were kind of obtuse. I mean, many of them were. It took me about 20 hours, maybe even more, to complete the game, and I had a few, very strong hints from you guys, having played the game before me. I also kind of accidentally found one spoiler, basically a solution to a puzzle online. So, like,
which one was that? If you remember.
I don't remember, but basically what I was trying to do, because I was lost in year 2. Oh, I remember what it was. We actually didn't touch on this one. It was when you show the rebellious guys in the blue casket the letters to show that you're rebellious too. And
yeah. Okay.
But that one, like, had that not happened, had you not given me like hint, this could have been 30 hours plus of this game, and it's meant to be maybe 10 hours, 15 max, maybe. So So I didn't really have a good time. So basically, what that means is there was a lot of running back and forth, clicking on things, trying to figure something out, and a lot of, you know, unproductive time.
Yeah.
So I'll say that. And I do want to say this though. While I really would not recommend this game to anybody, yeah, we do have to remember this game was essentially created in 1998. It was.
Yep.
So I feel like if I saw you, as my bigger brother playing that game in 1998, I would have been like, oh, that's cool. And I would have really wanted to play and really try to solve everything. And, so I'll say that. But to play the game in the 2020s, I can't recommend it at all.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go. Yeah, so I said it during my intro that I really think this is a great game. It was I mentioned a friend back, maybe in the year 2000. He played it, and I didn't see a whole run through. I think he just really loved it, and maybe that like hole punch puzzle was part of it. And but I just think I think it's great. I mean, I think the story's great, the music's great. It fits with the themes. It's a cool melding of this sort of Mexican culture and film noir. Um, so that's really cool and unique in and of itself. The voice acting is great. You know, Notwithstanding some of the maybe sound audio mixing issues, but the voice acting is great. Uh, the music, the gameplay isn't great, but I think it's a product of the times when it was created. And what I really like about this game is that I think it really forces you to listen to the characters, listen to the hints, look at everything, examine all of your items in your inventory, and you can figure everything out. And if you can't, you can always the puzzle equivalent of brute forcing something, which is just try everything on everything else, and you'll get it. So I would definitely recommend this game, unless you're really opposed to puzzlers. I would definitely recommend this. It's one of my favorites. It fits into the category so perfectly, and it's a little sad. This sort of was like the end of LucasArts doing puzzlers because it wasn't commercially successful early on, and then wound up gaining such a cult following afterwards, and is rated very high, ranked very highly by people. But it sort of brought down. It sort of was the end of the adventure puzzlers, and I guess a function of that was also just uh, you know, graphics and everything getting a lot better, and you could do shooters and platformers and everything else. But I think it's a cool blast from the past. Definitely check out the remastered version. I don't even, it must be buying the original PC version. It might not even run on current stuff. So definitely check it out. That's my thoughts. Tom?
Yeah, so I want to start off with saying some good things about the game because I know I haven't really done any done any of that thus far, and yeah, usually I do have positive things to say about things in particular. So like, I mean, just to echo some of the stuff that you mentioned, I really liked Manny as a lead character. I thought he was expertly, voiced. So, kudos to the voice actor there. He had a lot of personality. He was funny. Uh, yeah, it's credit where it's due there. And then also like the theme, like this take on the this Mexican culture that you mentioned, and this particular story of the dead there. Like that's not something that you see in video games very often, or even in media in general, at least in this country. So it was cool to see, get some exposure to that too. In terms of the gameplay, like it's been said, I kind of agree with points from both of you. Like, a lot of the puzzles are extremely obscure seeming at times, but on the other hand, there are a lot of. It's not all random. But for me personally, I found myself having to brute force a lot of it, and that just became kind of tiresome first like couple of hours. I clocked in at 16 hours total on this game. Yeah, I mean that's probably more than I would have liked. The stuff that I mentioned, the issues with just controls and camera angles, stuff like that just makes it harder to enjoy a game like this, where like the game's already hard, but then you're fighting with your tools to actually complete the game. That's making it even harder on top of that. So I think if this game were to be remade completely in a new engine with new graphics, new camera angles, new controls, I think it would be great. Or maybe not top tier, but I think it would be a lot better. So, yeah, I have a hard time giving this one a strong recommend. I mean, maybe if you're really into like puzzle solving, if you're really into like escape rooms, maybe this would be up your alley. But personally, I was glad to be done with it, and I don't plan on ever playing this one again.
All right, there you have it. Another Brothers and Boss Battles down. Next week we'll do the third in our Adventure Puzzler category, which will lead us to the fourth week where we put these three in the battle arena and have them go at it. Through us, of course. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. See you next time.